across America, so bear with me whether you're for or against it. I'm going to be talking about medical marijuana this morning. And I'm going to start out, I'm going to give kind of a brief history of medical marijuana in America. I'm going to go over a couple key points. I'm going to break down and explain some of the components of medical marijuana so that you might have a better understanding. And but overall, I would like for each and anybody who has any questions on it to please research it, because you might be surprised at the versatility of this medicine. So I'm going to start off with the history of medical marijuana in America. 1906, the U.S. introduced the Pure Food and Drug Act. Opium and morphine were targeted within that act, but marijuana was not. In 1914, the Harrison Act is introduced, defining drug use as a crime. By 1937, 23 states had outlawed marijuana due in part to Mexican immigrants whom had brought the drug with them, or to deny morphine addicts a new avenue, gateway drug, In the same year, the Marijuana Tax Act was created to make illegal the illicit use of marijuana. The Boggs Act and Narcotics Control Act brought about mandatory sentencing for narcotics, and that came into play roughly around the 1950s. In the 1960s and 1970s, which a majority of the congregation will attest to, it was, and the public view on it had changed, causing laws to ease up a little bit. 1980s rolls around, and in comes Ronald Reagan. He came in to clean up the streets. Severe, pretty severe, in my opinion, inhumane penalties ensued after that. In 1996, California became the first state to legalize medical marijuana, to the anger and ire of the federal government. And since then, states that followed prior to the turn of the century to legalize were Alaska, Oregon, Washington, and Maine. This is all medical marijuana. As of 2016, states that are seeing the benefits were, some more states that were seeing the benefits were Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Dakota, and Arkansas. Pardon me. As of today, there are 33 states and Washington, D.C., which have legalized marijuana in one form or another, with more on the docket, even though the federal government has failed to reclassify it outside of a Schedule I drug. Some of the uses for medical marijuana. I'm going to break down some of the different, because this is where it can kind of get choppy, so I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. You got some different things like tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the THC, it's the psychoactive painkiller, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial component that you will find within marijuana. You have CBDs, which are cannabidiol. They relieve anxiety, convulsions, depression, inflammation, and nausea. It's a sedative, a sleep aid, and a muscle relaxant. And that's the component that doesn't have the psychoactive in it. So that's not the component that makes you all goofy. You have CBC, which is I'm not going to try and even pronounce it. It's an anti-inflammatory, a painkiller. It actually treats acid reflux, and it's an anti-anxiety and antidepressant medicine. You have CBGs, which are painkillers, muscle relaxers, antiarrhythmic analgesics. Wow, I'll say that 10 times fast. A digestive aid, and a somatic, which is a stomach function. And then you have CBNs, which are mild psychotropics, so you might see some, purple spaghetti gods. It may stimulate bone growth. It's an analgesic. It's anticonvulsive and an anti-anxiety. And then there's a couple others which I'm not really going to go into because they're lesser points. Here's a couple points to remember, and I'm flying through this, I guess. The FDA has not recognized or approved marijuana as a the marijuana plant as a medicine. As of right now, scientists are conducting preclinical and clinical trials with marijuana and its extracts to treat symptoms of illness and other conditions. The term medical marijuana refers to the treating symptoms of illness and other conditions with the whole unprocessed marijuana plant or its basic extracts. And there are many different extracts, which I'm not going to go into. The scientific study of the chemicals in marijuana, called cannabinoids, has led to 2 FDA-approved medications in pill form. You have dronabinol and nabilone, used to treat nausea and improve appetite. So now I'm going to give you guys a couple testimonials of people who had severe medical issues and turned to medical marijuana as their for a term, their drug of choice. Kathy Jordan of Florida, she had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and hers is a short one. I used to be a hairdresser from Newcastle, Delaware, but now I'm a medical marijuana patient and activist living near Tampa, Florida. I was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, in 1986. I was 36 years old. I was told by my doctor not to smoke anything, standard advice for a new ALS patient. Suffered typical deterioration of my body over the next 2 years and prepared for my death. ALS is a terminal illness, and I probably had only another year or two. Then in 1989, standing on a beach in Sarasota, Florida, I was passed a joint and said, why not? After just a few puffs, I had a wonderful feeling that my disease had stopped. I'd been smoking ever since, for 21 years now, and I think I'm aging quite well, thank you. Cannabis, the scientific name for marijuana, works for me, not me, this is in context. Cannabis, the scientific name for marijuana, works for me by drying up my saliva. ALS patients often drown in their own fluids, helping me cough and stimulate my lungs through bronchodilation action. Science now shows that cannabis is actually a neuroprotectant, treating autoimmune conditions like ALS and MS by suppressing excitotoxicity and over the production of glutamate. Also, cannabis has long been known to have anti-inflammatory effect, and inflammation is now believed to play an important role in ALS. Brenda L. of Ohio suffered from breast cancer. 8 years ago, Brenda was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was in stage 1 when they found it. She underwent a lumpectomy and sentinel node biopsy. A lumpectomy is where just the tumor is removed, as well as the normal breast tissue that closely surrounds the tumor. A sentinel node refers to the first lymph node that drains from the breast tumor area, found by injecting a radioactive dye. They shoot the radium into your breast and they follow it up to the nodes to make sure that you don't have cancer in your lymph nodes. And I did not, which is a good thing. So all I had to have was radiation and hormone therapy because my cancer was fed by the estrogen. Tamoxifen, I think I said that right. Tamoxifen is used to treat certain types of breast cancer that require estrogen to grow. It's often used following surgery and radiation. Drugs.com can provide more information on that line of treatment if you're wondering. That's the drug from hell too. The hot flashes were like 100 times worse. I mean, you just break out into a sweat all over for no reason. I mean, 25, 30 times a day. And the radiation, it was, I don't know, it was weakening. It didn't hurt. It was completely painless. You wonder, what are they shooting through my body? But you can't feel it, but you can afterwards. Brenda still has scars from the overspray of the radiation. Now, 8 years later, it burned her skin. Brenda was lucky that she's dark-skinned after the treatment. They were surprised because they said most of the time the skin peels away. But I'm part Indian. They said I did very well. One of her breasts is bigger than the other because of the effects of the radiation. After the radiation, it left you very drained and so nauseous you didn't even want to think about food. Brenda had heard that cannabis was good for treating the nausea following cancer treatment, so she tried it, and I could eat my dinner. Maintaining consistent weight was important. The wasting that follows this kind of treatment can kill just as easily as the cancer itself. Brenda underwent 35 days of radiation, boom, boom, boom. That's the deliberate way the treatment went. Then another type of radiation. They gave me 2 different kinds. If I hadn't had the cannabis, that time it actually says the cannabis. If I hadn't had the cannabis to get through the nauseousness, I would have lost weight, and I don't know. Who knows what would have happened? Cannabis gives me a lift. It doesn't lay me back or anything. I want to do things, and it gave me energy that I didn't have at the time. I could eat, and that was the important thing. Since she smoked her cannabis, she did have some respiratory irritation, but that was minimal and could have been remedied if she had known about vaporizers. Pardon me. Brenda also suffers from arthritis in her knee and in her hip. In addition, she has chronic pain in her feet and has had surgery in both of them. She says, I get around really well. 57, and I still mow the grass. I usually smoke cannabis before I do. It kind of lessens the pain to keep me going. The anti-inflammatory benefit of cannabis helps her with the arthritic pain. It takes her mind away from the pain. Brenda sums up her feelings about cannabis by saying, they should let people grow their own medicine if they want to. And it would be so easy for somebody to plant a little seed and get some medicine. When I lived in Arizona, Arizona was a medical cannabis state. And I personally will attest, when I first came home from Iraq, the VA was dosing me with just bottles of pills. And when medical cannabis became legal there in Arizona, I started using it. And lo and behold, I stopped taking pretty much every medication I had, minus the vitamins and stuff. So for me, my personal journey with it was one that it helped me with the pain. It helped me with a lot of the anti-anxiety that I had, like right now. And overall, it just made my mood and my personal self-being feel better. And with each person, obviously, it's going to have a different reaction. There are people who are allergic to it. There are people who don't like the sensation of it. That's why I suggest that every single person research it before they delve into it. That being said, kind of end on a corny joke. If the world was all to just smoke a joint at the same time, there would be 4 hours apiece and a global food shortage. And if there's any questions on anything that I've talked about up here, I tried to slow it down some, but it didn't work out. I have it works cited, and I can give you some references. And thank you very much.